Hey there guys, so today I'm having a super bad makeup day, so I thought what better thing to do than to talk about books instead. So today I want to share with you everything that I've read and maybe watched in January, but there won't be a lot of watching, I can tell you that. So I have a couple of books from last year that I haven't talked about yet because I kind of forgot or something like that, so I just wanted to quickly catch that up. The first book is The Upside of Unrequited. I listened to that on audiobook, and this is the story of a girl that is kind of chubby, so she's not like this typical slim female, and she has a lot of unrequited love so far in her life. She's never, been brave enough to tell a boy that she likes him because she was like, well, she's a fat girl, so no one's gonna like her back. So now in this particular summer that we're looking at, her twin sister actually starts dating a girl, and she feels kind of left out, but also she feels like she should finally, set up for herself and tell one of her crushes that she likes them. The problem is that she's not quite sure who her actual crush is right now. So I found this to be very entertaining. I think I gave it around 4 stars. It was just a fun read. I think it's great to listen to an audiobook. This is not something I usually read. Okay, so now my memory was full just because, today is the best day for filming ever. So I don't really am in the mood to continue, but I will because I want this video to be done. So I was talking about The Upside of Unrequited. That was quite cute. It was nice to listen to an audiobook. I don't know whether I would have liked it if I would have read it as a physical book, but I think it's a great audiobook, and if you're looking for something to listen to, I can definitely recommend this, even though I feel like it would be a nicer story for summer just because it takes place in the summertime. I thought the romance was quite well done, and there's a lot of representation in the book, and there's a lot of gay and lesbian, or mostly lesbian relationships and stuff like that, to the point where I felt it was a little bit unrealistic. Like pretty much everyone's parents were both females, so female-female relationships, and that is just nothing I have experienced in my life. And even though I think it's important to show these things as kind of normal in books, I feel like if it's like every single parent in the book, it kind of gets a little bit unbelievable for me personally. But apart from that, I thought it was very interesting and fun. The next book I wanted to talk about is Tipping the Velvet, which I also listened to on audiobook. And I think that was kind of a bad decision because I think this is a book that I would have enjoyed much more if it was not an audiobook, if I had read the physical copy. Now, I had a little bit different expectations going into the book. I knew that would be about kind of also female-female relationships and stuff like that, but in a kind of historic setting, so somewhere around, I don't know, the 20th century or maybe 19th century in Britain. Don't quite remember the time frame here, but it was very interesting. I especially like the first part where it's all about our main character, living at home, but, wanting to break free and going to London and live a different life than the one that, she knows. And so she meets that kind of theater girl, Kitty, and they leave together, and I thought that was the most interesting part. After that, there's a lot of shit going down, and it feels like reading 3 different books. Like you have that first part with Kitty, you have the second part, which is basically the main character whining about her life and growing more and more, fond of the idea of, dressing as a man and living as a man. And then the last part again, a lot more whining, but also her realization that, life goes on and she actually finds, a home and stuff like that. But the main character was definitely too naive and too whiny for me personally, and she did a lot of stupid stuff, especially in the second half of the book, which I thought had interesting, aspects, but overall it was just not what I expected. And I feel like, when I have a main character that acts stupid again and again, that makes me very angry, even though obviously it was a different time, and so maybe, views were different and ideas were different, but still she was a whiny bitch in the middle of the book, and I did not like that. Next book I want to talk about is called Marlene, and it's a German book. It's set in World War II. I don't want to mention too much about that because I don't think it has been translated or it will ever be translated. But this was a second book in a series, kind of. It followed a different main character from the first book, but a character that I was much more interested in the first book. So I thought this would be great, but apparently, it was just okay. I think I gave it 3 stars. I do like the aspect of learning more about Poland during the Second World War, and especially about people who tried to resist the Nazis and stuff like that. And this was basically her life after all of that. And so again, it was not what I really expected and what I wanted from the story. There is a lot of, happy coincidences in this book. She's in a lot of situations which were impossible to survive, and she still survived them, which is something that I do not like. Also, she is supposed to be the very strong character, but sometimes I just struggled with her motivation. And then there is this twist towards the end of the book where she completely changes just because something changes in her life, and that changes her whole perspective, and suddenly her whole life is about something completely different and she's a completely different person, and that just really pissed me off. That is especially after the war, so after 1945. The story continues a little bit after that, and yeah, I did not like that portion. I thought it was, very forced and done with a very, brutal hand. I don't know how to say it, but it was just forced upon the reader that this is a life-changing event now, and that from now on nothing will ever be the same, and had nothing to do with the end of the war. So that was very unbelievable to me, because I liked the first version of her much better. Also, as I said, it wasn't realistic in many points, and there were also some things that I didn't quite understand. Like there was like a huge explosion and pretty much everyone survived except for one person, and I did not understand why and how that happened. I don't know. So this book was okay, but it was definitely not what I wanted it to be. Then I wanted to talk about a series that I've read recently, and that is the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. I read this in the German translation because I got it from the library, and that's the reason why I don't have the series and also Marlene here, because I also read that from the library. I also returned that already. But the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy is very hyped up and very popular on BookTube, so I wanted to know what all the fuss was about. It's really, really big books. It is written for teenagers, so it's easy to get through, but I always feel a little bit discouraged about these super big books where pretty much nothing happens. Now, for the first book, I did like the introduction into the world that we got. There were a couple of characters that I really liked and wanted to know more about. But in the second half of the book, there's again a kind of a twist, and then we kind of travel back in time, and learn a lot of stuff like info dumping, and that just wasn't fun to read. I felt like the end of that first book was so weak and so horribly done. I think I gave this like 3 stars if I remember correctly, because I did enjoy the first part. I did enjoy that it was set in Prague, which is a city I've been to before, and so it was very interesting to read, even though I don't know how accurate it would be. But that was the first book. Now the second book was so boring. Like, I was so ready for it to be over. It's definitely a middle book in a series, which is always a hard thing because they're always super boring. You feel that they're just there to connect the storyline from the first book with the final showdown in the last book, and I just feel like we're so over the middle book syndrome. So I gave that one 2.5 stars. It was one of my least favorite books of last year. And then finally this year I've read the last book in this series, which is Dreams of Gods and Monsters. it did pick up a little bit again, which I was very happy to see, because honestly, such a big book with nothing happening in it would have been really bad. I think I gave that one like 3.5 stars or something, because I think it is the best book in the series, but still it was nowhere near good for me. It's definitely not worth reading that horrible middle book to get to this end. But yeah, for the characters, I felt like the two main characters, I did like the female main character, Karu, I think her name is. I did like her in the first book, but then when we had this whole memory thing happening, she turned into something else. For the second book, she was just whiny, and she was, I don't know, she didn't really take action. She was just there doing what other people told her because she felt like she couldn't get out of that situation, which was pretty dumb because she's one of the most powerful beings in that world, so it really doesn't make any sense. So in the last book that changed a little bit again, but yeah, I don't know. The male character that is focused on is Akiva, I think that's how you pronounce it, and he is just nobody, pretty much. He has no character. Like, what is he even? I don't know. Like, he's just good looking, basically, and depressed. I don't know. I didn't know what Karu saw in him. He was so boring. He had basically no edges to him at all. His siblings were quite interesting, and I did like what happened with his sister in the last book. That was pretty much the one thing I was enjoying in the series, or in the last book especially. Also, there is this white wolf guy, or whatever his name is, and he is creepy as fuck. Like, when he turned up in the first book, I was interested in his character, but in the second book, he's just so creepy and weird, and I just wanted him to be gone. So yeah, character-wise, it really wasn't for me. And there's this couple who are actually humans from Prague, which are supposed to be kind of the comic relief, and I did like some of these aspects, but they were very insta-lovey, and that whole, I don't know, that whole marriage thing, like, was that really necessary? I don't know. So overall, this was just a huge letdown, and I don't know why this series is so hyped up. I think there's so many better series that deal with more important topics, and really the only thing I thought was interesting was the new perspective we get in the last book, because that girl is actually a scientist, and I'm a scientist too, even though in a completely different field, and so I liked her perspective a lot. And I like the idea of the angels, you know, what that would do to our world if there were suddenly angels sighted. So I like that. Okay, now moving on to the last book, because I don't want this to be like 30 minutes long. The last book I've read is by Astrid Lindgren, and it's called Die Brüder Löwenherz in German, so something like the Brothers Lionheart in English. I don't know, I haven't looked it up. But it's one of Astrid Lindgren's children's books. She wrote a lot of those, and this was pretty much my first fictional boyfriend, like Jonathan. He is so adorable. So this was a book I read when I was maybe like, I don't know, like 10-ish. I was reading very early in my life, and yeah, this book has illustrations in it as well. Let me see whether I can find my favorite illustration. Like, this is one of my favorites. It's so cute. It's right at the end. So yeah, this is a book all about two brothers, Jonathan, and the other one is called Krümel in German, which is basically like a breadcrumb. Yeah, his real name is Karl, and these two brothers live very poorly. You don't really know when, but I would say it feels like the 20th century, maybe like the beginning or middle of the 20th century. And Karl is very sick, and Jonathan is the big brother, and he likes to take care of him. He tells him funny stories and fairy tales and stuff like that. And one day Karl overhears that he is going to die, that he's so sick that he probably won't survive for very long. And so he's very scared, and his brother Jonathan wants to calm him down, and he tells him all about a land called Nangiala. Probably pronounced wrong. But this is basically a fantasy world that is very like classy fantasy with like dragons and knights and horses and stuff like that, so everything you would imagine. And so Jonathan tells him that when you die, you go to Nangiala and everything is going to be great there. You have great adventures and stuff like that. So Carlos actually, you know, calmed down, and he likes this vision of this foreign land. And then there is kind of an accident and they die, and they actually get to Nangiala, and that's when the story kind of takes off, because we follow them through this world, which is supposed to be more like a paradise, but there's an evil king that tries to infiltrate into this world and, you know, make it a nightmare, basically. So this is a very, I don't know, it's an old story. I think it's from the 70s or something like that. So you have very little female representation. There's only one female character that is really important, but she is very important, and she is a person in power, which, you know, at least we have that. We follow these two boys through their adventures, and I can see that this book is a bit problematic. It deals with physical disability in a very bad way, especially at the end, but also at the beginning. So yeah, I can see why this is problematic, but I have to say it's still one of my favorite children's books, just because I loved it so much. And I think the beginning is so sad, and at the same time it's so sweet. It's like a very bittersweet thing. And when I started reading this, I immediately started crying just because it is so cute. So yeah, I can see both sides, but I still love it. And because of the problematic aspects, I gave it 4.5 stars, because, you know, it's not perfect, but I do love it, and I rate for enjoyment. So that would be all the books I wanted to talk about. Again, this video is probably super long, but if you want to know anything else, we watched Dark finally. Oh, it was so good. It's such a good TV show, so if you haven't watched Dark yet, definitely go and watch it. I'm so proud that there is something made in Germany that is so good and exciting, and I can't wait for the second season. Apart from that, we watched some movies that we got for Christmas, but it was all like movies we've seen before. Yeah, I don't know. We're just, you know, like December and January were just very quick and hectic months for me. A lot was going on, especially at work. And so, yeah, I didn't have a lot of time for watching movies or anything like that. Still watching Blacklist. I'm in the second season now, almost done with that, so we can go into the third season finally. And yeah, today we're going to start Altered Carbon, which I'm very excited about. So that would be all. If you have any questions, or if you want to let me know what you've read so far this year, then write a nice comment. I always appreciate those. You can also leave a like if you like this video. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon. Bye.